In the twilight of the 1960s, as the Vietnam War raged and man walked on the moon, another battle was reaching its fever pitch on American streets and racetracks. This was the peak of the muscle car era, a time when Detroit iron ruled supreme and the quest for automotive dominance knew no bounds. V8 engines grew to huge proportions, carburetors gulped fuel like there was no tomorrow, and horsepower figures climbed to dizzying heights. The big three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, were locked in a high-octane arms race, each vying to outmuscle the others with increasingly potent machines. It was in this crucible of competition that legends were forged. Chevy's Camaro snarled at Ford's Mustang across dealership lots. Pontiac's GTO roared past Dodge Chargers on main streets turned impromptu drag strips. And in race shops and engineering labs, the next salvo in this war of pistons and camshafts was always in development. But as the decade moved to an end, one battle line was drawn that would produce one of the most audacious weapons in this mechanical arms race. Chrysler's 426 Hemi engine had reigned supreme, leaving its competitors in a cloud of tire smoke and wounded pride. Ford, unwilling to accept defeat, was about to unleash its ultimate counterpunch, a car so rare and so powerful that it would become the stuff of muscle car legend. This is the story of the 1969 Mustang Boss 429, Ford's nuclear option in the muscle car war. To understand the significance of the Boss 429, we need to take a step back and explore the era's fierce competition. The 1960s saw the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, locked in a high-stakes battle for supremacy. This era of automotive excess was fueled by a potent mix of post-war prosperity, cheap gasoline, and a youth culture obsessed with speed and style. Now, bear in mind that this rivalry wasn't confined to the streets. It played out on drag strips, NASCAR ovals, and in advertising campaigns that became increasingly brazen. Muscle cars at this point weren't just about transportation. They were rolling statements of engineering prowess and brand identity. The competition pushed each manufacturer to extremes. Engines grew larger, bodies became more aerodynamic, and horsepower figures climbed to dizzying heights. It was an arms race on wheels, with each company trying to outdo the others with every new model year. General Motors, with its vast portfolio of brands, was a formidable contender. Chevrolet's Camaro and Pontiac's GTO were street legends, while Oldsmobile and Buick contributed their own tire-shredding machines to the fray. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS454 and the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am became icons of the era, representing GM's commitment to performance across its divisions. Ford, determined not to be left behind, had already made waves with the Mustang, creating the pony car segment. There was also the Torino GT, and that leaves us with Chrysler. See, Chrysler, at the time, was often seen as the underdog. But this underdog had a secret weapon, the 426 Hemi engine. Introduced in 1964, the 426 Hemi was Chrysler's masterstroke in the high-stakes world of NASCAR racing. The engine's name came from its hemispherical combustion chambers, a design that allowed for larger valves, better airflow, and, ultimately, more power. When it debuted at the Daytona 500, Hemi-powered cars swept the top three positions, with Richard Petty taking the checkered flag. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement of technical superiority that sent shockwaves through the racing world. The Hemi's impact was so profound that it prompted NASCAR to change its rules, requiring engines to be available in production cars. Chrysler's response was to create a slightly detuned street Hemi for its production vehicles, bringing race-bred performance to public roads. This move transformed Chrysler's image almost overnight. Once seen as a marker of boring, practical vehicles, Chrysler suddenly became synonymous with raw, uncompromising power. The Hemi turned cars like the Plymouth Roadrunner and Dodge Charger into the stuff of legend, capable of performance that was almost surreal for street-legal vehicles. The Hemi's mystique was further enhanced by its relative rarity. It was an expensive option, sometimes adding up to a third of the cost of a car. This exclusivity only added to its allure, making Hemi-equipped vehicles the holy grail for performance enthusiasts. On the drag strip, Hemi-powered cars were rarely unbeatable. They dominated the superstock and pro stock classes, with drivers like Dick Landy and Sox and Martin becoming household names among racing fans. The engine's durability and potential for modification made it a favorite among racers and hot rodders alike. In other words, Chrysler was kicking everyone's ass, including Ford. Ford, unwilling to concede defeat, knew it needed something extraordinary to challenge Chrysler's reign. Its answer came in the form of a beast, the 1969 Mustang Boss 429. This wasn't just another muscle car, it was a calculated strike against Chrysler's crown jewel. The heart of this automotive monster was the massive 429 cubic inch V8 engine, affectionately known as the Blue Crescent for its distinctive valve covers. Ford engineers had poured countless hours into its development, creating an engine that could breathe freely and produce staggering power. They started with the robust Ford 385 series engine as their foundation, but they knew that to compete with the Hemi, they needed to push far beyond its original design. They did this by reinforcing the engine's internals, fitting it with new steel connecting rods and a forged steel crankshaft, components that could withstand the immense forces this engine would generate. At the heart of the Boss 429's breathing apparatus was a massive 735 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor, perched atop a specifically designed intake manifold. This combination allowed the engine to gulp air and fuel with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. One of the most innovative features of the Boss 429 was its cylinder head design. Ford employed a dry deck setup using O-rings to seal off the coolant and oil passages. This design not only improved sealing but also allowed for easier maintenance and modifications, a nod to the engine's racing aspirations. For the 1969 model year, Ford utilized unique hydraulic lifters, a choice that balanced performance with streetability. This was an engine designed not just for the track, but for the street as well, a true dual-purpose power plant. The result of these engineering efforts was staggering. The Boss 429 could propel a Mustang from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 7.1 seconds and hit 100 miles per hour in 13.6 seconds, figures that were nothing short of extraordinary for a street-legal car of the era. Officially, Ford rated the engine at 375 horsepower and 450 pound-foot of torque. However, this was widely believed to be a significant understatement. Rumors persisted that Ford had intentionally downplayed the engine's true output to help buyers avoid sky-high insurance premiums. The real figures were thought to be much higher. Perhaps most impressive was the engine's durability. It could sustain 9,000 RPM for extended periods without failure, a testament to the robustness of its design. However, for street use and insurance purposes, it was limited to 6,200 RPM. Without these restrictions, it was said that Boss 429 equipped cars could reach speeds of up to 175 miles per hour. But there was a problem. The 429 was simply too big to fit in a standard Mustang engine bay. Undeterred, Ford partnered with CarCraft, a specialized performance shop, to make the impossible possible. The Mustang shock towers were moved, the battery was relocated to the trunk, and even the front suspension had to be modified to accommodate the engine. With the engine done, the focus shifted to the body of the vehicle. The 1969 Mustang Boss 429's exterior design was a masterful blend of form and function, reflecting both its muscular heritage and the unique engineering challenges posed by its massive engine. The most striking feature was the car's broader stance, necessitated by the extensive modifications to the engine bay. This added width gave the Boss 429 a more aggressive, planted look compared to its Mustang siblings. The front end was a study in purposeful design, featuring a chrome-ringed grille housing to seal beam headlights. This was complemented by a thin wraparound front bumper that added to the car's sleek appearance. A functional front spoiler wasn't just for show. It played a crucial role in keeping the front wheels firmly planted during high-speed runs. The hood, with its prominent scoop, was perhaps the most obvious tell that this was no ordinary Mustang. In 1969, this scoop was painted to match the body color, creating a cohesive look that belied the beast lurking beneath. The car's profile was defined by two sharp body lines running from front to rear, interrupted only by the air vent on the front fender. These lines added visual interest and emphasized the car's length. A signature Boss 429 emblem on the front fender left no doubt about the car's pedigree. At the rear, the Boss 429 presented a slightly taller and more inward slanting profile than other Mustangs. The taillights, composed of three separated blocks, were a distinctive feature. Across the rear deck lid, bold Mustang lettering left no doubt about the car's identity. Reverse lights occupied each corner of the rear end, a practical touch for a car that spent plenty of time at the drag strip. The Boss 429 sat lower than other Mustangs, enhancing its already aggressive stance. This, combined with its heavier front end, gave it a predatory, ready-to-pounce appearance. In its first year, Ford offered the Boss 429 in 5 different shades, allowing for some personalization while maintaining the car's menacing presence. Every aspect of the Boss 429's exterior served a purpose, whether functional or aesthetic. The wider body accommodated the massive engine, the hood scoop fed it cool air, and the front spoiler kept it stable at speed. Yet, despite these functional elements, Ford's designers managed to create a car that was as visually striking as it was powerful. On the inside, the 1969 Mustang Boss 429 reflected Ford's focus on performance while maintaining a degree of refinement. Despite its race-bred nature, the cabin offered a blend of simplicity and elegance that was characteristic of high-end Mustangs of the era. The dashboard layout was straightforward, prioritizing functionality. 4 gauges faced the driver, with the speedometer and tachometer taking prominence. These instruments were vital for monitoring the car's performance, especially given its powerful engine. Ford offered buyers the option of wood trim, which added a touch of sophistication to the interior. This extended the steering wheel, where a wood rim option was available, providing both a premium look and a comfortable grip for spirited driving. On the passenger side, the wood theme continued with an insert housing a round clock, a nod to more luxurious vehicles of the time. Chrome accents on the gauges provided a subtle contrast, enhancing the overall aesthetic without being overly flashy. The center console, while low-slung to maintain a sporty feel, concealed a surprisingly large storage compartment. This practical touch demonstrated that the Boss 429 was designed with real-world usability in mind, despite its performance credentials. Comfort wasn't overlooked either. The bucket seats were upholstered in leather, matching the door trim panels. This attention to detail created a cohesive look throughout the cabin and provided a comfortable environment for both driver and passenger. While the interior of the Boss 429 wasn't lavish by luxury car standards, it struck a balance between the Spartan nature of pure race cars and the comfort expected in a street-legal vehicle. It provided drivers with all the necessary information and controls without unnecessary distractions, making it an ideal place for focused, performance-oriented driving. Only 1,358 Boss 429 Mustangs were ever built between 1969 and 1970. Each one was essentially hand-assembled, making them among the rarest and most sought-after muscle cars ever produced. The limited production was no accident. Ford needed to build just 500 examples to homogenate the engine for NASCAR racing. However, despite its racing pedigree, the Boss 429 never achieved the NASCAR dominance Ford had hoped for. Rule changes and the rise of aerodynamic cars like the Ford Torino Talladega shifted the competitive landscape. However, the Boss 429's legacy was cemented in automotive history as one of the most audacious and powerful muscle cars ever created. Today, the 1969 Mustang Boss 429 stands as a testament to an era when American automakers were willing to push boundaries in pursuit of performance supremacy. It represents the culmination of Ford's determination to outmuscle its rivals, particularly Chrysler and its legendary 426 Hemi. Surviving examples of the Boss 429 are now highly prized collector's items, fetching astronomical sums at auctions. Each one tells a story of American ingenuity, raw power, and the relentless pursuit of automotive excellence. The Boss 429 may not have achieved its intended goal of dethroning Chrysler on the racetrack, but it left an indelible mark on muscle car history. It stands as a monument to a time when the quest for horsepower knew no bounds, and automakers were willing to create automotive legends in their pursuit of glory.